11 accidental inventions you can't imagine your life without. Some scientific discoveries come about after painstaking, goal-oriented lab work finally yields the result that the researcher is trying to find. But many of the most incredible discoveries in the world came about when someone found something they weren't looking for. Every day we use products like microwaves and boxes of matches to make our lives easier. But believe it or not, these ingenious inventions that allow us to live out our lives hassle-free were not the product of trial and error, but were created entirely by accident. Yes, you have to thank for a staggering amount of things in your life, ranging from delicious potato chips to the literal life-saving drug penicillin. Herein, we have gathered some of the most life-changing products that were accidental inventions. So let's watch the video. Matchsticks. Matchsticks are being used all over the world. Nobody could have guessed it could be an accidental invention. In 1826, a chemist, John Walker, noticed that there was some chemical on the sticks, and it was dried. So he playfully scraped the stick coated in chemicals across his stove and found that it caught fire. Walker's friction lights, as he called them, were originally made out of cardboard, but eventually he switched over to using wooden splints and sandpaper. The microwave. Percy Spencer was an engineer at Raytheon. He was part of the Navy. He was known as an electronics genius. In 1945, Spencer was fiddling with a microwave-emitting magnetron used in the guts of radar arrays when he felt a strange sensation in the pocket of his pants. A sizzling even. Spencer paused and found that a chocolate bar in his pocket had started to melt. Figuring that the microwave radiation of the magnetron was to blame, or to credit, as it would turn out, Spencer immediately dedicated his time to his work. The end result was the microwave oven, savior of eager snackers and single dudes worldwide. Chocolate chip cookies. It's hard to imagine a world without chocolate chip cookies, but the delectable dessert wasn't actually invented until 1930. I wonder how people survived back in the day. On the day that the cookies were created, Ruth Grace Wakefield, the co-owner of the Toll House Inn, was preparing some chocolate cookies for her guests when she realized she was out of baker's chocolate. Thinking on her feet, Wakefield decided to chop up a block of Nestlé semi-sweet chocolate, assuming that it would melt and spread evenly throughout the batter. Instead, what came out of the oven was the very first batch of chocolate chip cookies. Another accidental invention that we love. Xrays. X-rays play an important role in making a diagnosis in the medical field. Who could have imagined that X-rays invention was actually accidental? In 1895, a German physicist named Wilhelm Röntgen was working with a cathode ray tube. Despite the fact that the tube was covered, he saw that a nearby fluorescent screen would glow when the tube was on and the room was dark. The rays were somehow illuminating the screen. Röntgen tried to block the rays, but most things that he placed in front of them didn't seem to make a difference. When he placed his hand in front of the tube, he noticed he could see his bones in the image that was projected on the screen. And boom! X-ray was invented like that, and it has been used by many medical professionals since then. Insulin. In 1889, two doctors at the University of Strasbourg, Oskar Minkowski and Joseph von Mering, were trying to understand how the pancreas affects digestion, so they removed the organ from a healthy dog. A few days later, they noticed that flies were swarming around the dog's urine. Something abnormal and unexpected. They tested the urine and found sugar in it. They realized that by removing the pancreas, they had given the dog diabetes. Those two never figured out what the pancreas produced that regulated blood sugar. Too bad for those two. But During a series of experiments that occurred between 1920 and 1922, researchers at the University of Toronto were able to isolate a pancreatic secretion that they called insulin. Penicillin, a life-saving drug. Discovered in 1928, penicillin was one of the world's first antibiotics, but the man who discovered it, Dr. Alexander Fleming, never actually meant to revolutionize all medicine, as he later described it. Rather, Fleming came across the antibiotic entirely by chance when he left out cultures of Staphylococcus aureus in his lab for 2 weeks, and returned to find that their growth had been prevented by a mold called Penicillium notatum. Teflon. We can thank chemist Roy Plunkett for the invention of Teflon. Plunkett was an employee of the DuPont Company's Jackson Laboratory in 1938 when he started researching new refrigerants. One substance Plunkett experimented with was tetrafluoroethylene, also known as TFE gas. When he returned to open the cylinder he had stored this gas in, he was surprised that the TFE had polymerized to form a mysterious white powder inside the container. Curious Plunkett conducted some experiments and found that the powder was not only heat resistant, but it also had low surface friction and was inert to corrosive acids. Ideal for cookware. Vaseline. In 1859, 22-year-old chemist Robert Chesborough was investigating an oil well in Pennsylvania when he caught wind of a strange rumor among the oil rig workers. That rumor was about a jelly-like substance known as rod wax that constantly got into the machines and caused them to malfunction. But the substance had good side too. Chesborough noticed that the workers used rod wax to soothe cuts and burns on their skin, and he took some home to experiment with. The product of his experimentation was what we know today as petroleum jelly or Vaseline. Coca-Cola. Another amazing yet accidental invention. The man who created the syrup for Coca-Cola was not a chef or even in the food industry. Rather, the soda's inventor was a pharmacist by the name of Dr. John Steve Pemberton, who was seeking to create cocaine and caffeine-filled alcoholic drinks that people with chemical addiction to drugs could use to wean off morphine and other drugs. However, when Prohibition hit, Pemberton was forced to take the alcohol out of his formula, and thus the first bottle of Coca-Cola was made in 1886. After a while, cocaine was also eliminated from the formula. Cornflakes. Cornflakes, our breakfast buddies, were also an accidental invention, and we are thankful for this invention. John and Will Kellogg were brothers and breakfast entrepreneurs. The brothers were trying to boil grain to make granola. They accidentally left a pot of boiled grain on the stove for several days. The mixture turned moldy, but the product that emerged was dry and thick. After a few experiments, they got rid of the mold and came out with cornflakes. The pacemaker. Another accidental but life-saving invention. John Hobbs was an electrical engineer. Hobbs was conducting a research on hypothermia and was trying to use radio frequency heating to restore body temperature. During his experiment, he realized if a heart stopped beating due to cooling, it could be started again by artificial stimulation. This realization led to the pacemaker in 1951. What a marvelous invention! Indeed, these lucky accidents have allowed people to discover unexpected but useful inventions. Perhaps more often, world-changing discoveries are the result of a creative mind realizing that material or invention could be repurposed into something incredible. If you like this video, do share your thoughts in the comment section and subscribe to our channel for more amazing videos.